Time being 9:01 on Wednesday, April 14th, 2021. This is the Kane County Administration Committee. I'm calling it to order. Can we please call?
Berman,
Yeah.
Davis,
Davis here.
Ford, Fries,
Here.
Gums,
Comes here.
Shepro, Martin,
Martin present.
Caius.
Caius present.
Okay.
All right, can we have approval, can I have a motion to approve the minutes from February 10th and March 10th, 2021? Mr. Frost moves,
Berman
Comes for a
second.
second.
Berman second. Any changes? I think we went around, our recording secretary and I went around and around on this a little bit, so I think we're set on it as far as I'm concerned. No, hearing nothing, seeing nothing. Can we have roll call, please?
Berman,
Yeah, Berman, yeah.
Davis,
Davis, yes.
Ford,
Yes.
Fries,
Yes.
Gums,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Caius.
Caius, yes.
Thank you.
All right, financial report. Do we have someone to present that? Okay, apparently that is attached, so we'll just accept that. Any public comment? Anyone online or in the meeting room here that would like to speak? Seeing none? We'll move along, and I'm going to, as chairman, move item, with your permission, move item 9, 2 and 3 to fit in this position between 4 and 5, which is Judge Hall, and that would be the JJC courtroom build out. And we have a short presentation from.
Correct. Well, thank you very much for moving us up on the list and giving us the opportunity to come today. I've spoken on this a couple times at Judicial and Public Safety and one at Committee of the Whole. We're here just to ask for a resolution to be passed that would authorize the build out of a second courtroom at the JJC. So next slide. The goal is to have that courtroom built out due to the need. Hopefully, I know it's a little ambitious, but hopefully by January of this next coming year. Next slide. The reason that we're asking for this is because the abuse neglect cases, and these are children who have been removed from their parents due to abuse, neglect, or dependency, has risen dramatically over the last couple of years. We're now 2021, the last note was the end of February. We're now in the middle of April, and we're still projected to be at about a 200 plus caseload, which as you see would be a substantial increase over previous years. Next slide. What we're discussing, and we understand the priorities that the county board has. The reason that we're here is we don't feel that this is just something that we're asking because we want it. We feel that there's a need. We now have courtrooms. We have a juvenile delinquency courtroom that's at the Judicial JJC, and our abuse neglect courtroom is at 3rd Street. And we want to combine those as originally was designed when the JJC was built. Next slide. We did have Cordigan and Clark along with Chris Allen, who's been helpful and instrumental in helping us guide this through. We did some proposals and they came back and indicated that it's projected to be a project at $851,548. Of course, that was before it goes out for bid. What's important to note is there would be no additional, this isn't an addition. This was originally planned when the JJC was built. So we would just be building out the space that's already there. The public defender's office currently is in the space where the second courtroom would be. Next slide. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. The funding source, which I know is always an issue, is how is the county board, or how do we believe that this should be paid for? What we're asking the county board to consider is, because of COVID, we have some significant cost savings this year that we want to try to capture. It's a one-time savings. And next slide. And our line item, because of the lack of jury trials we've been able to hold because of COVID, the county board budgets and gives us money to have to pay for jurors and juror expenses. There's been very few juries, and that'll continue on because of the space problems that COVID creates. So we're going to have a significant amount of savings in that line item. Contractual and consulting is our interpreter line item. Again, due to a couple different things, we haven't been using the interpreters, so we're going to have cost savings there. And then there's a couple other line items that we're going to save money in as well. Next. Addition, juvenile board and care, that's where we take children. There's a $400,000 budget for placing children in facilities that when they need that, but because of COVID, this is a one-time savings where we're not using that line item this year. So we want to use that as well. Next slide. Finally, and actually one more slide then. I guess can you back up? I think that actually this is the old one. Okay, so if I have you go one slide more. We did in between the first time we presented and then the second time presented, we were pleased to learn that there was a judicial facilities fee that was a newer fee that had started to be collected when there was some work done at the end of 2019. That fund is specifically designated to finance new judicial facilities. We did talk to the Kane County State's Attorney's Office to see whether what we're trying to do would qualify under a new judicial facility, and their legal opinion was that it would. And there's approximately $980,000 in that fund that we could tap into as well. So what we're asking at this point in time with our resolution is we're asking eventually right now this committee, but then eventually the county board to authorize the use of your capital funds to build out the second courtroom. To allow us to use $125,000 that was available at the end of last year to roll over into this year, and then to finance the remaining $726,000 through the use of this COVID savings. Next slide. This is just a timeline. We're here in front of you. We're hoping to get your passage today and your approval today, which would then take it in front of finance at the end of the month. Last slide. And I would be happy to answer any questions that anybody has about the proposal.
Thank you, Judge
Mr.
Owen.
Chairman, Bates, please.
Madam Bates?
I would like to bring to the attention of the admin committee the Kane County Green Building Policy. With all respect, this policy requires that this would be called a non-major renovation or remodel, which is less than 50% of the building's replacement cost. The stipulation in the building policy is greater than $1 million. This is not quite greater than $1 million, although it might become greater than $1 million, I believe, possibly. Most things do go up from their estimate. So I would ask that that we look at the green building policy and make sure that this project complies with the green building policy.
Yes, ma'am. This is Chris Allen. The green building policy is going to be 100% considered in this project, and that's Chief Judge Hull's team is very supportive of that, as well as our design team.
I should have known, Chris. Thanks.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Ms. Bates. Mr. Froz?
Chief Judge, I'm just curious, you call for the use of some capital funds. How can we guarantee that those are going to be paid back? Is there a guarantee that we can have?
Well, there's a couple things. One is when we're looking at our budget, so we have significant savings as of right now with our jury and our contractual. So we feel like we're in a position where there shouldn't be any reason why we won't have that money. We're not anticipating even just going on a month-to-month basis. Even if we were to restart jury trials right now, we would still have that savings. But the slide that wasn't up there, that's a real difference maker on that guarantee, is that new Judicial Facility Fee Fund that has $929,000 in it. And we haven't tried to figure out yet, because we haven't gotten to the passage yet, how much of that fund we or you guys would want to use, but the project could be fully funded by that alone.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, this building was designed to have this function built into there. It's a shell space that's been awaiting this use, and obviously there's a need for it. It's a much bigger picture thing. I wish we could attack the core reason why we need this extra facility.
I don't know why.
Also, the fact that it's gone up so fast in such a short period of time really concerns me. So physically, we need to do this. I support it 100%, but I also would like to look at the bigger systemic issues also sometime. Thank you.
Mr. Martin?
Yeah, I have one question that can be answered and one that can't. How much, I mean, I'm not suggesting that we don't meet our needs, but how much of is there any speculation or science guessing at how much of the abuse and neglect that we've seen elevate is the result of the pandemic? Because I want to make certain that we do what we need to do to properly administer the system, but I don't want to sit with an empty facility. And I guess the second, let's assume naively that 3/4 of it disappears. Will there be a use for this facility if we build it out? I guess I don't know what happens. And, the pandemic has created a lot of questions. And this is, to my mind, it's a huge one. The second one, which I'll let you answer first. If the PD's in there now, where do they go?
So we went over with the architect, and there's some space there that's like a break room. There's another office that's not being utilized. So what we were able to do with the help of the contractors, they went over there, and there is space right now, a conference room and a break room that they would then create and turn into office space for the PDs.
So is that part of this 800,000?
Correct. And the PD has been involved. We obviously, as you know, we had a change in the state's attorney. So Ms. Mosser went over there the other day and had some concerns that we had to address as well. So Corrigan and Clark is currently looking at that, but they don't believe that it's going to cost us anything that I guess a substantial amount to change and to build a wall there to get in the office. It's a wash, he said.
So now address the impossible question.
Well, you know what? So everybody, and the chief judges across the state have all seen the same rise. And I don't think it's COVID related. Speculation is that it's because of the AJ Fruitt case out of McHenry County, where the child was killed by his parents, and two DCFS workers were charged criminally, charged with neglecting their job. And as a result, what we've seen is a shift where DCFS for the longest time was trying to do intact, where if a case came to their attention, they didn't bring it to court. They were trying to take care of it on their own. Now, after that, over the last year and a half, they're bringing everything to court. And so as a result, we don't believe it's COVID based. We believe it's a policy change. The chief judges have asked the head of DCFS to come to our meetings to try to verify that. But they have yet to come to that meeting. But about the space, as Mr. Franz had said, the original intent was to have both juvenile courtrooms. We've always had two: abuse, neglect, and delinquency. The plan was always to have them under one roof so the judges could support one another. So let's say the cases did go down, which would be great. We would still always have an abuse, neglect, and a juvenile delinquency courtroom. So those two courtrooms would be used. This will create space over at the old courthouse because right now it's in 140, and that would be a room that would be available. But this is always going to be a courtroom that'll be utilized, because that was the original intent when the building was designed.
Okay. So I guess you answered the question that couldn't be answered.
Yeah.
Right. You happy with that, Mr. Martin? Any questions or comments online? Okay, thank you. Then I will accept a motion for the resolution authorizing the build out of a second courtroom at the JJC. Mr. Frost.
Berman moves.
Mr. Ford seconds. Do the Fs. Roz and Ford. And if there's no further discussion, roll call, please.
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Davis,
Davis, yes.
Ford,
Yes.
Fries,
Yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Caius.
Caius, yes.
Thank you.
Passes
Thank you very much, and thanks for letting us.
Mitchell.
Yeah, take care.
for
Bye-bye.
your meetings.
Thank you.
Okay, now back to the regularly scheduled program. Facilities Management. Mr. Allen.
Yes, sir. Today's kind of a somewhat sad presentation on the multi-use facility because it will be the last presentation provided to this committee. The 30th is the grand opening, so there won't be a presentation unless desired next month. Blair, could you bring that up, please?
Yay.
Trumpets.
I'd also mention, as Frost speaking, that it's been, I think tomorrow is our 1-year anniversary of our first meeting of our weekly construction meetings. So almost exactly 1 year from our first meeting, we're having one of our last meetings.
Do you want to postpone this one till tomorrow or?
No.
Those meetings are getting very fast too, so that's a good thing. It's a good sign.
Yeah.
What time is the grand opening so everybody knows?
11
11
o'clock
a.m.
on the 30th.
Yeah, you'll get an
I
invitation.
got it. I just want everybody else to make sure everybody knows.
Oh,
Yeah, mailers are being sent out. Eventbrite's been launched and the notifications are being made multiple different ways. I'll wait for Blair to get the presentation up.
oh.
If it pleases the chairman, I'll go through some of these other items while we're waiting for that. So building B, lower roof replacement, now that the board approved the resolution for the new architects, we'll be moving towards getting meetings with them and going to design. Building C RTUs had kind of a delay of some equipment needed to get those things properly running, and we're working through that balancing and the ongoing issues. Again, corners, office demolition and Fabian building demolition is now going to be able to be given to one of the newly awarded contract A&E teams. Parking lot and repairs, this is similar, same thing with sidewalks and replacements. And all CARES Act items have been installed, so we won't see that next month. And then moving on, building C indoor air quality, we're still working with that. That's part of the building C rooftop. And then we move to item B, a resolution. I gave it to you on a flash drive. I can run up and get it.
These are just pictures of the
building, yes, sir.
building itself?
Yeah, the current state of it.
Yeah, we're going to see it in this couple weeks.
Okay, if you're good with no presentation today, I won't run upstairs. Okay.
I'm okay with it. Let's somebody.
I'm okay with it too.
We'll go ahead and skip it, Blair.
Thank
That's
you
all right.
for-
That's all right.
You did a fine presentation without slides. Good job.
Well, I can give final report. We started the punch list walk last week. We have another punch list walk this Friday afternoon at 1 with the concerned parties, i.e. the coroner, sheriffs, building management and such. All the furniture has been installed, so final cleaning and prep work. Again, there'll be a little more activity going on with the punch lists. We did have Kane County Development visit us earlier in the week and did an inspection preparing us for the occupancy permit. So where everything's moving very smoothly and just right on schedule. Okay.
That's the important part.
Sorry, I blew up the sound system.
Okay. That conclude your report?
That concludes my report, sir.
That's part of it. I think you probably come up somewhere else usually. Okay, so then we have a resolution authorizing contract for elevator modernization project, Government Center Campus Building A. Can I have a motion? Mr. Ford,
Gums will second.
Gum second. Then you explained that in.
Yes, so obviously this building here has a very outdated old elevator and is in need of significant repair. It was deemed better to replace it than continue to try to throw money away on maintaining what we have. So it's a very important project for the building.
Any questions?
Just out of curiosity, how old is the existing elevator?
I'd have to go back and look, but I believe it dates back in the 70s.
Okay.
It's
1970, not 18. Sure? Are you sure? I just want to say that being involved in elevators in the past, how important it is for us to upgrade. It's so much difference in the design and the backup mechanism for elevators these days. That is so important that we take a look at all the old elevators and get them to this point.
That'll be part of the guidance to the architects who we'll hear from later today in reference to the building master plans or the county master plans. We got a lot of systems, Mr. Ford, that you're aware that need a lot of looking at and a lot of attention. So that's all going to be covered, and we'll bring forward that quantitative information at a later time.
It's good to hear.
I have a question.
You found it, Blair? Do you want to go back to the slide, sir?
Make it quick.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, may I ask, but while we're on the elevator, can I ask a question, please?
Okay, sure.
How are we going to, what are your plans for accessibility? So if somebody is not able to walk up the stairs to attend a county board meeting or to go to the treasurer's office or?
There are, Madam Chair, there are devices that can be incorporated, such as temporary lifts and or what I refer to as a man chair. We'll make sure that there is accessibility as per ADA requirements.
And actually, we've got a resolution moved and seconded, so let's deal with that first, and then we can show the slides.
Yes, sir.
This is on the elevator. Then, any other questions, Madam Chair?
So there's going to be just clarification again to make sure, I want to make sure that we're all sensitive to this so that we're in complete compliance. So it's going to be independent, or is it going to be supportive? So there would have to be, they're going up the set of stairs. How would they get up the set of stairs to get here?
It would depend on the scenario and what can be provided in this dated building, which is obviously a challenge. And I still need to work through whether or not I'll have somebody stationed down at the front doorway waiting, or if we'll manage it through appointments or something of that nature.
Can a temporary ramp be put up?
Well, the issue is the third floor and the fourth floor, and how the third and fourth floor serves staff members and publics.
How long will the repair take?
I don't have an estimate at that time, but generally they're about a 4-month project.
This was to start to finish. This was a 3-week construction project, though, right?
Yeah, start
3
to
weeks
finish.
while the elevator's down? Isn't that right?
Design and remove the old cab. We're going to reuse a lot of the internal cabs. So when the elevator project's done, it's going to look like the same elevator, because essentially it is.
But the question would be, how long is the elevator going to be inaccessible?
I'd have to get back to you on that.
I think it said that there was a completion time for the work itself was 3 weeks.
Yeah.
On the RFPs from your accepted urban
Yes.
contractor.
We
3 to 4 weeks.
We have to make reasonable accommodations. So we must ensure that those reasonable accommodations are met for anybody who may need it. Meaning that if somebody works upstairs on the 4th floor and can't get access to it for whatever reason, they have an accommodated office downstairs. And as far as board meetings, that may be something we want to take a look at, and reference perhaps the state's attorney can review what we actually need to do. If it's opening up the auditorium downstairs.
That would have been my suggestion, possibly having the broadcast of the downstairs so they could observe the proceedings.
Correct.
If they can't get
And
on the same floor.
participate in the as well.
Right, yeah, for Zoom, like a Zoom meeting.
Yes, correct, sir. Shop drawings, 2 to 3 weeks. Lead time for materials and equipment deliverables, 10 to 12 weeks, and completion of work, 3 to 4 weeks.
3 to 4 weeks, yeah. Mr. Froz?
Yeah, I would, the stairwells are so narrow in this building. I don't know that there's any way we could do something and without traumatizing the person. But the demand is so low, I think it'd be fairly easy to, even if we set aside a little room down there on the lower level, if somebody does show up, we have the department come to them and, see what they need and accommodate them on the ground floor level there's no reason that person has to physically go up to building management or somewhere, or I'm sorry, the building department or development department. If that person, we can send a representative down to meet with them. And as far as the county board meetings, yeah, the auditorium is already wired for sound, so we can accommodate that fairly easily too. But it is going to be a very, very small demand, but we can accommodate it. But this whole thing kind of makes me think, we're spending another $107,000 on this building. We got a brand new generator out there. I forget what that costs.
Yeah.
And if the boilers go out, $1 million. So we just gotta, there's no way around it. We're not gonna have a new building by the time the needs for that elevator be replaced, but just something that bothers me.
Sure.
I'll join in being bothered.
It's just like having a car.
We're putting a lot of perfume on a pig, I
Like
think.
when you have a car that is suddenly having a lot of repairs, that's just before you trade it in. So.
Right. I don't see the new model coming along the line, though. It's a problem. Is there an accepted procedure or a better procedure for examining just exactly how the accommodations will be made? I don't know if there's.
As recommended, I'll get back with the state's attorney's office and figure out the exact language into the level, the extent of what we need to do, so that way we're meeting all legal guidance.
Okay,
Thank you.
satisfied? Okay, anybody online with questions or comments?
Yes, this is Deborah Allen, Mr.
Allen?
Caius. I just want to say that I tend to like old buildings, and this one has been well built and is lovely to look at and easy to access generally. And for the employees who work in the building, the window's open. So if you want to enjoy a spring breeze, you can do that. I just think that this building has a lot of use left in it. I'm not saying that we shouldn't make plans for moving out to the Judicial Center, but while we are here, it's a glorious building and a nice place to spend time. And the architecture, with the exception maybe of the stairwells, Mr. Frost, I certainly agree with you there. I think the architecture improves the life of those of us who use the building and those of us who work in it. If you want to do a survey of the people who work in the building and ask them if they really hate being here, I don't do that. I'd just as soon have real data. But I just think someone should speak to the truth of old buildings as well as condemn them for their age. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Allen. Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Bates?
Ms. Bates, thank you, Ms. Allen, for those comments. And I would like to say that I also appreciate the history of our Building A, and that I think historical buildings contribute to the quality of life of our community and our workers. So thank you, Ms. Allen.
Thank you, Ms. Bates.
Okay. Any other comments online, in the room? Then hearing
Mr.
none.
Chairman,
Oh, excuse me, Mr.
just a
Ford.
quick thought. We're just talking about access for using stair lift, and Drew mentioned how narrow our staircase is. I just wonder if we can take a look at the back staircase and look at that maybe for interest. I think that's a wider staircase, so the stair lift may work there a lot better than inside. That's all.
All options are open, Mr. Allen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good point. Okay, then, hearing nothing else, then please call roll.
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Davis, Ford,
Yes.
Fries,
Yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Caius.
Dice, yes.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Okay, then we'll,
Back to the slides then, sir, real
Yes.
quickly.
yeah, sure. Let's
Okay.
have a look.
Next slide, please. So that's the Kane County Multi-Use Facility, and I took that shot when I was doing the site walk for the JJC build-out that Chief Judge Hall mentioned. And you can see the signage is going up, and that concludes my presentation.
That's it.
You said you make it quick.
That's fast. Looks great.
Nice picture.
Good picture. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I think you get to continue on facility usage, or is that,
Yes, we had 2 requests for the 2021 Geneva Chambers Festivals and the 2021 Casa Hatch. And I do believe the board is, or the committee is now informed.
okay, nothing that we have to, nothing to vote on, and we don't need a consensus or anything to do that.
Information only, sir.
So the information is in the packet.
Yes, sir.
On the items. There's 3 or 4 items for the village.
Mhm.
And it's the hike around the courthouse. Is that the hike around the courthouse?
Yeah, they put up,
That's a hatch.
as was mentioned in a previous committee meeting, there's signage up in support of the CASA program.
Right. Okay.
Hands around.
Oh, hands around. That's it. Hands around.
Yeah.
Great acronyms. They always get me. Okay, information technology. I guess that would be you, Mr. Fonstock.
Okay, so the first item under IT is the discussion of the Forest Preserve chargebacks. And Blair, you have a presentation that I had provided earlier. Could you go to page 14? So the early part of this, which was sent out, reflects the work that was done last year in October and November. We had a fee study done, and it was just to determine what the appropriate chargeback rates are for all of the non-general fund offices, departments, and agencies that use the IT department's service and support. So we chose to go with option 3, which was based on the staff support services labor portion of the budget. So it deals with wages and benefits. And we were looking at recovering basically the costs of IT support and services based on recovering that amount of wages. And so the formula that was provided basically took our gross wages and benefits and divided it by the number of employees to get the cost per unit. So if you go to the next page, Blair, we took that information and created a bunch of chargeback forms for the different offices and departments that we work with. And this is the Forest Preserve's hardware and software costs. This is what our actual hardware and software that they pay for. This is separate from reimbursement for support services. So they pay their actual hard costs, we would refer to them as, in a invoice, and that's paid in full annually for the different equipment and software that they use. So if you go to the next slide, Blair, there's another one. We were trying to figure out how to implement this, and we talked about a phased approach with the Forest Preserve. I think that was the conversation. And as a starting point, just to talk, we showed them the costs in an invoice, which was the $202,741 that's highlighted, and then we showed them a 20% discount, and that brought it down to $162,193. So Blair, if you skip to the next page, this is kind of the breakdown of the left is hardware, software costs, and then you'll see the middle there, there's the 20% off, and the 22 and the 23 year, we did another discount of 10%. So we're just trying to determine a place to start. And then we talked with the Forest Preserve, Monica Meyer and Ken Stanish, and they were talking about incrementally increasing the amount that they pay over last year versus a discount off of what the total is. And I think we've kind of discussed this, that more is better, and we believe that it is direct increase to what we would have collected normally. But they were proposing an increase of $20,000 a year per year until they catch up to where we're at. And it's just historically, not been meeting whatever rates were set in the past for other partners. So we're just trying to establish a common rate that we're charging all of the different offices and departments, and it's going to increase for the Forest Preserve from what they paid this past year, $20,000 per year every year. So Blair, if you go to the next slide. These are just summarizing what I had said in the past about the 10 and 20% type of proposals. Then the counter was $20,000 per year increase each year to 100%, and then gradually increase to full payment by 28, 29, somewhere in that time frame. Then you go to the last item, which is basically drafting an intergovernmental agreement or an agreement, letter of understanding, memorandum of understanding, but something that formalizes the services provided, the term. And I put the net difference in there because I think it's important to understand that from people that we provide services to. So the health department is a special revenue fund. They actually pay for their services. We have the CANCOM agency, pays for their services that they use. The different departments and offices, including even GIS, which is a sub-department of IT, they actually are special revenue from recorders fees, and they pay this rate. So over the next 8 or 9 years, this is what the payments would look like. And the middle column to what we're currently looking at in 2030 is 237,543. So that's what we're proposing. I think that's the last slide, Blair. Is that correct? Oh, this is the next steps. So confirm the rates for the phased approach with the Forest Preserve, bring that back in a draft agreement. I don't know if it has to be an IGA or a letter of understanding, but we'll talk to the state's attorney about that. We'll finalize all the hardware, software costs, actual rates. I think those are pretty settled. It'd be finally approved in June for the county board. So anybody have any questions about the approach that we're taking?
Roger, I have a
Yes.
couple of questions for you. Davis,
Sure.
The quantity of 77, what is that unit of measure?
That's the number of employees, and I think that we were working on that number by a couple right now with Ken, but it's the number of FTEs.
Okay, all right. And you guys dismissed the actual work ticket approach in favor of of this formula?
Yeah, it honestly, you can slice this a million different ways. And this is just the clearest way to determine the size of the organization and the amount of work involved. And I would offer that while there's service tickets where we send people out to the front lines to do the work, there's the mountain of work that happens in the background to make everything run and update, whether it's finance servers, application data, authentication servers, storage systems, network, wireless, telephones. So all of those things are going on every day, whether they call us or not.
I see. My concern there is that they lose the ability to, control their own destiny in terms of, how much help they ask for. So, sort of takes that incentive away. One other question is the net difference that you show. That's just for informational purposes. You're allowing that 524 number would be forgiven in this phase.
That's up to the board. I mean, we set the rates and we were trying to work out an approach that would be agreeable. I believe the Forest Preserve was of, the position and opinion that they could do the $20,000 increase and eventually catch up. I tell you that's better than not catching up. We appreciate the effort. We appreciate the fact that they recognize that the services and the amount that they were paying, probably wasn't equal to what our rate should have been. So just recognizing that and increasing it. So yeah, the net difference was just to identify what that looks like for the board in terms of financials.
Okay.
And it is the committee and the board's decision. When we get the agreement finished, we'll bring that back and it'll go through the process just like everything else. So ultimately the board will decide what we do or don't charge.
Okay.
The other the other thought that comes to mind, and maybe Monica and Ken can help, does that really reflect, are there members of the Forest Preserve? Is that number
That's
really
true
reflective
across
of
the
the use,
board.
or is that?
That's what you use. It's an indicator of the size of your organization. There are other
Okay.
examples in the cars, which the health department, or other offices, they don't have that. They don't use. They have a separate independent instance of the finance system that we maintain and operate for them, which other offices just use the county, system as a whole. So it maintains separate, entire separate system for that. Which we operate and maintain too. So they're all different nuances of what people do and how they do it differently. And there's probably as many ways size of the organization by the number of employees.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
And we discussed and arrived at that, or you presented that proposal like a year ago.
It's been maybe 6 months. We started that process, and honestly, I mean, it's just every which way. And there's, different offices are phone intense. The court clerk's office has a ACD call center that we have to operate, and it's unique. They're the only one that has that right now in the county. Example is we do weekend and court bond call and electronic courts with Zoom and licensing. It's kind of unique to the courts. Most of our office that we work with the Forest Preserve, and it's different. It's just a different type. Forest Preserve has saying that they should be paying $202,741. So the agreement is that they want to phase that full price in by increasing it every year by $20,000. So the second column shows the $62,000 they normally would pay, plus $20,000 to get them to $82,000, and then every year below that it increases by $20,000 until they catch up in year 2030.
And not to burden the Forest Preserve with additional monies, but is that a flat rate based for 10 years or 8 years?
It's increased by 2% annually, and that's just an estimate. We don't know exactly how much it will increase, because what you see in the past has been no increase in number of employees, but a 2% raise has been traditionally provided. That could go up or down. And I think in that agreement, we'll have to have some language that, kind of explains how that gets adjusted for inflation or for increases in costs.
And services provided.
Yes. And we would put some language in there. And it's, again, it's not, it'll never be, kind of penny for penny accurate. It's going to be you got to paint with a big brush kind of thing. So we'll try to be as fair as possible. I think the 2% is probably traditionally accurate. It's been, close, but I think that's a fair schedule for them as far as the things that we've discussed so far.
And is this going to be replicated at all other departments as well?
So we already do this with all of the other offices and departments, and they are paying at the rate that was in the fee study. It had just been over the years as the Forest Preserve moved from they were originally at the Yellow House, and it was a smaller organization. They moved, and things continue. When we first picked it up, it was just a small opportunity to help do this. Now it's just it's continued to grow. It's a bigger organization, a lot different number of people involved, and we were trying to figure out with finance from a report that was done. I don't remember what year it was. It was about 2016, 17. There was a report done about fees and services in the county, and one of the things they told us that we needed to do was do a fee study to determine how we charge people back, to make sure that it's accurate, to make sure that it's supported. The health department, the courts, they go back to the state to get reimbursement, and they want to know how we came up with our number. So we had to do a fee study to get that. And then, in looking at it, you're looking at what the difference is between the rates in the fee study and what people actually pay. And some went up and some went down because some were paying a little more than they should have. And I can tell you that just historically, the Forest Preserve has been an office or a department that's been supported, and it's just kind of been a mutually agreed upon rate over the years that wasn't really substantiated in any base. I mean, it was just a number that they decided, probably 15, 20 years ago. I don't know. And it's just kind of continued that way. So that's kind of the history in its broadest sense.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good explanation.
Thanks.
That's fine. Any other questions? Did I hear somebody else?
An agreement with T-Mobile is basically a program that for certain cellular phone services for public safety, they will offer us free service for those people to use. And we started using this during the pandemic because they were offering it as a incentive and a benefit to us. In the process, we were using their services under a month-to-month general agreement, and the state's attorney's office asked us to go and get so this is basically an agreement to take free services from T-Mobile, and we included a not to exceed $30,000. That's in case we have to pay for additional services or additional hardware above and beyond what the free service is. There are some scenarios where we need to add data to a line in addition to the free service, or we have to buy a new device or a new accessory. So we in a course of a year, we know it won't exceed $30,000, but we wanted to include that. But it will allow us to continue to offer the HEROES program for people in public safety. That's the sheriff's office, I believe, the court security, and CaneCom. We can use this for their phone services. And it does save us money for basic phone service because it is free to us. So it was just correcting and getting a formal agreement with T-Mobile so that we can use this. We're also looking at what we can do with T-Mobile in other terms, just to see where we're at. We currently use Verizon as our master agreement through the state, and T-Mobile, with their merger with Sprint, they're trying to get very competitive. And I think, we're very happy with what we're doing, but it's always good to see competition. So we're trying to work with them on this HEROES program. So we just need the approval of this to continue that, and we're recommending that approval today.
Mr. Martin?
I move.
Mr. Martin moves. Just a second. We've already have. Yeah.
Did that already? I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, we've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Online? Hearing none, seeing none. Roll call, please.
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Davis,
Davis, yes.
Ford,
Yes.
Fries,
Yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Caius.
Caius, yes.
Thank you.
Resolution authorizing license agreement with the City of West Chicago. Again, new,
Motion and second.
motion and a second.
Yeah.
Moving along. Mr. Froz, gonna get somebody else involved here.
Davis, second.
Wait there. Mr. Berman.
Okay. So what you have in front of you, there's actually two parts to this, but the first is the license agreement and easement use with the City of West Chicago. And what you have is basically a license agreement for us to install a fiber cable in the DuPage Business Park, and it will go to the data center in that park. We use the data center now, and we lease lines from the park. The park is getting out of that business, and they don't want to continue to operate, maintain the connections. So we talked to a couple of private providers about leasing the lines from them. And what we determined was that the cost of ownership to build it ourselves versus leasing it from another third party, we actually had a payoff or return on investment period of about 4 years. We'd own it instead of leasing it. So what we proposed was to build the fiber to the data center, and we would own it and also have the option of leasing fiber to the data center to other entities if they would like to do that. So it'll give us also some potential revenue if there's other cities that would like that same service. So this was a project that was budgeted and a part of our fiscal budget that was passed for 2021. So the construction part has already been approved and is ready to go. We're just trying to get the license and the easements settled with the city of West Chicago. So this agreement allows us to simply put the cable in the right of way, put our structures in the right of way. This was worked on with the city of West Chicago's legal counsel and Megan Baxter from the state's attorney's office. They're granting us the license, and the fee per year is $2,023.20 per year for us to use it's about 2 miles of easement and right of way. If you look at the actual resolution there's a couple things that need to be changed, and we were going to try and change those either now or through finance. We're still getting some final information on the actual license. One piece that we're waiting for is some insurance addendums and some insurance items that we need to include. We're going to have those in time for finance. We do know that in paragraph 2 in the actual resolution, the cost is $2,023.20 for a 10-year per year for 10 years. And the paragraph 3, it says it has $9,033 in the actual number, but it says in writing $30,000. I believe it's not to exceed $30,000. That's basically for the plan review and all the field inspection and the work that West Chicago has to do for the construction phase.
Hearing none, seeing none.
I was gonna make a,
Mr. Martin.
But where does the 2023, how is that computed?
It's actually calculated based on the linear feet
No kidding.
in the right of way that we're using, and it's about 10 cents a foot, or no, 18,000 feet,
That's
right?
fine. I just wondered
Yeah.
what the basis was. I was
We're-
kind of humorous that it was.
Yeah,
2,000.
we're essentially putting three pipes that charge us 10 cents a foot.
And what do we, in that data center out there,
Yes.
who operates the?
So the data center is a SBA Edge. So it's a tower company that owns a data center outside of Chicago, and they provide services for co-locating our computer equipment. So we run servers, storage, network services out of there, and it's providing us with a lot of things that we just can't get from one of these old buildings. Everything from power, redundant power, generator, air conditioning, security.
with
Yeah,
the concept?
yeah. But that's what we're doing with it.
And the last thing we had done was redundancy. This help us with the redundancy.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's going to come, the fiber will come in from the south on Fabian, and it comes from the north on 38. And it actually attaches back to the highway and fiber system at 38 and Kirk and Fabian and Kirk. So we come out of the data center 2 different directions and attach.
It'll never be down.
That's the goal.
There you go. Okay, any other comments, questions? Mr. Ford?
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say this could really grow into a big positive direction for the county, taking this fiber and offer it to these different entities that a lot of them are looking for it and looking for the opportunity. So I'm really excited about this project.
Thank you.
And I have, to your
Madam
point,
Chairman?
Mr. Fort, excuse me, thank you. Thank you for recognizing me. To your point, Mr. Fort, how expandable is this? So if we wanted to increase services for other things, I know that it was brought to my attention that due to the cameras that the police officers are going to be wearing in the municipalities, there's going to be a lot of data on that. Can we expand that? Is
Sure.
that available for this?
So the fiber that we installed in the county right away with the highway department runs from Algonquin to Montgomery. Also have fiber on Kirk Road that runs from Route 56, more than enough capacity for probably the next 10 to 15 years. And then we're putting in 2 additional empty conduits or capacity for probably the long term even.
And the servers? Will
Couple conversations with them and other agencies that as you do that, look at what the state's attorney and the state requires in terms of the evidence for the case providing at a larger scale. And the data center that we're in, I mean, the capacity to do it from there is there. I mean, we just have to buy additional storage, additional processing, and put it in. And it certainly can scale up to that. I think right now, how many cabinets?
Answered, okay?
Did we get?
So then we're,
We need a motion and a second for that, I believe, to discuss the.
Berman moves.
Berman moves, Ford seconds.
Okay, so you have authorizing easement agreement with SBA Edge. This was approved at a previous county board meeting and through administration. In the process of approving it, we had to go through vetting for the state's attorney's office, and the state's attorney's office wanted to revise some of the language about indemnification and some of the liability. They wanted more favorable terms for the county. So we asked them to work with SBA to come up with this easement agreement that met all of the state's attorney's requirement for indemnification liability language. They had asked us that since it was changing, to bring it back in full form so that the committee process could approve of it again. So you've already approved of this once. SBA Edge offered us to give us the easement access on their private property to put the cable into their building. They're doing it basically at no cost to us. So they're going to let us pull cable across their private property, go into their building, and I believe the cost is $1. So we're asking for approval to get this easement done. This will be the last piece of the fiber that goes actually into their structure, but they're getting us a very good price. We had, I think the resolution asked for not to exceed $30,000. That's if they have legal fees or engineering fees, anything that we need to pay them as we pull the cable through, or if we have restoration of their property, if we put a tractor or boring machine and damage the ground, we fix it. So it's not to exceed $30,000, but the actual easement is $1. We're recommending approval of it.
Okay. Any questions? Comments online? Hearing none, seeing none. Roll call, please.
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Davis,
Davis, yes.
Ford,
Yes.
Fries,
Yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Caius.
Guys, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I believe that concludes our IT section. Yes. Thank you, Roger. And Charles. Item 7, Mill Creek SSA. Mr. Allen again, I believe you're up.
Yes, sir. Just a little update. The RFP for the native landscape maintenance program is in its final form, and I'm preparing to send it out to purchasing so we can get out to the public and get that project going. Item B, the Mill Creek ADA sidewalk project. Our low bid came in at $141,000. We have in the budget, the SSA budget, $115,000. So we're short $26,000 for that program to work in concert with Blackberry Township as they do their roadway resurfacing. So I've got a little more work to do to figure out where that money is going to come from, or defer it off for a year and try to budget, adjust the budget for 2022.
That's an SSA
It's
item.
a SSA item, not a King County.
They pay for and they decide.
Yes.
Anything else, Mr. Froz, on that? No? Okay, thank you. Item 8, vehicles. I don't believe there's any vehicles. I don't have any on my agenda. Construction.
Yes, sir. We've been doing a lot of talking about master plan, getting new architects, engineering firms on the county team, which was accomplished this week at the board meeting. So what we have done is we have brought in a representative from White and Company, Jason Dwyer, to talk about the master plan and provide a presentation, as well as take any questions from any members.
Well, welcome, Mr. Dwyer. Yeah, you can take your mask off there and speak into the microphone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Again, I'm Jason Dwyer with White and Company, President of Design and Construction. I think we've got a brief presentation for you here today, just to give you a little bit of the background. Pleased to be here. I think several of the members of the board recognize me from past planning work we've done out here over the course of the years. So I think you've got 2 documents in your pack. Next. So back in early 80s is when the decision was made to acquire the property. So as you all know, you've got the property on the south side of 38, which is the bulk of the property, which is divided by the Nicor gas easement, and then the smaller strip of property along 38 on the north side as well. So a lot of the focus previously has been on the south side, as you can see here. Go ahead, next slide. So the planning work that was done in 1989 was work that White did with the county that started to set the stage for this being a judicial campus. So the red boxes on the left side was really some early indications of a new judicial center. And then work on the right side was just long-term planning for other future buildings at the site. Next slide. In 1993 is when the Judicial Center was completed. And as you know, that was primarily focused on criminal courts in one wing of the building, and then in the other wing of the building had solution. So in 2010, those that were around may remember that the county was being afforded some additional judges in the judiciary, but there was a lack of space to accommodate those judges. So we did what we called a sub-study, a judicial options feasibility study, to take a closer look at some of the specific needs of the judiciary. So one of the bigger drivers was the additional judges and trying to find a home for them in county facilities. Another big driver at the time was a focus on parking and a little bit of shortage of parking at the Judicial Center site. So what we did is we looked at, I think at the time, 6 different scenarios on how to address it. One of the options actually at that time was building out that second courtroom at the Juvenile Justice Center. But at that time it was determined it wasn't going to support the needs of the caseload in the best way possible. So this led to, next slide, led to us moving forward with the county on the build out of the branch court and conference center at the Randall Road facility. So that helped in 2 ways. It helped to provide an additional courtroom for the county, but it also took a little bit of the pressure off the Judicial Center site, because we know that traffic court is a huge driver of number of people coming to court. It's a big call. So you took very good advantage of the facility you had on Randall Road, offices and their file spaces, and then provide some additional expansion space for the state's attorney, which would free up space in the other wing of the building to allow some breathing room for probation, court services, and public defender. So we had studied a number of different iterations on this in terms of a full build out or a partial stage build out, shell space. But this was really going back to the 89 or master plan phase, was intended to be the next phase of development at that site. Next slide.
Excuse me, please.
Yes.
Can you help me orient? Where's 38 on this picture?
38 would be to the right. So the area where the new building that kind of popped up, or the expansion, is in the large grassy area just as you're entering the site from 38.
Towards 38. Okay, thanks.
Correct. So the next image here, again, recognizing that as additional functions, staff, personnel continue to come to the site, that parking will be an additional need. So in a little bit of a readiness for maybe a future phase, we looked at the potential of incorporating a parking structure at the site to get a little bit more density of parking. So that was one option that was explored. And then the next slide really shows kind of what would be the ultimate build out. And this really was the idea of consolidating on kind of a long-term vision to move the civil courts, family courts onto the campus from 3rd Street Courthouse as well. So this just kind of frames out the overall conceptual planning for the Judicial Center expansion, just kind of one piece of development at that site. Next slide. So you can click ahead to the next one too. So one of the things that goes behind this, I mean, I've shown you a lot of the images and graphics for planning of different facilities, but a lot of that is informed by the analysis that we do relative to projections on staffing and space needs. There's a lot of different metrics that come into play with that. Some of it's driven by caseload in the case of the courts, or population has kind of a key indicator of additional staffing. As you look at it from a county government side, it could be things like new legislation, and not all items actually dictate additional staff. I mean, I think that we found that through the use of enhanced technology in that, sometimes your space needs will go down. So, you know, if you can incorporate digital imaging of files in that, maybe you need less space for file storage and all those kind of things. So this is kind of a little bit of a window into kind of the range of planning and staffing and space needs by group. The next slide shows some of the planning analysis we did on the judicial expansion side back in 2009. And the point with this is it's important to revisit these projections. I mean, we have a pretty good assessment and modeling capability to look toward the future, but things come up all the time that are hard to anticipate that can affect these things. For example, the recent legislation on the crime bill. There's issues around that could also inform toward a need of more staffing. Whether that's the need to review more body cam footage, just as by way of example, that may require some additional staff. Well, that's not something that at the time we were anticipating. That's a legislative change that can have an impact. So we'd like to, in a long-range planning process with our county clients, go back and revisit these things on a fairly regular interval, just to make sure that as things change, as the needs of the counties change, we can make adjustments in the planning along the way. Next slide. So this was the master site plan back in 2009. So the purple is the Judicial Center, the olive green in the lower left is your Adult Justice Center. Both of those have continued a capability to expand facilities. To the upper right in the main section in that sort of orangish red color is the Juvenile Justice Center. And then in the lower right quadrant there, that was at the time the location plan for consolidating the county government functions at the site in sort of the yellow color there. Now I know you've moved forward with the multi-use facility in a section of that part of the property. And actually taken some of the functions that at the time in 2009 were shown on the north side of 38 in the orange and moved those into the other quadrants. So I think, this just shows the adaptability of plans and the capability to make adjustments. But this was where we had left off in 2009. Next slide. So what we have here, I won't go through all the detail on this, but this gives you a little bit of a sense of a process that we've found to be successful working with other counties, working with Kane and other neighboring counties in terms of a comprehensive planning process. It really starts with a lot of the data-driven analysis, which I'll dive into a little bit more detail in a minute here, and that's the phase one work on the left side. And then when you get into phase two, you start to synthesize some of that analysis and data and start developing scenarios and options to address needs. That's where you start taking a look at laying out long-range vision plans to meet your needs, but also being able to adapt to short-range things that come into play that need to be addressed much more quickly, like that 2010 judicial options study where we move forward with some quick action projects to take care of an immediate need while continuing to look at long-range planning. And then in phase three, you start getting into a little bit more detail of aligning that with consensus of the various board members and key constituents that are part of the process, and looking at scenarios to fund the projects. We say that these plans are always great, but if you can't tie it to a funding plan, it's hard to move forward with them. So we like to work closely with you to give you good information on what the potential costs of these types of projects are, and then help you strategize in terms of avenues to make that happen, which could be sort of standard county funding options, looking at things like grants and other opportunities to incorporate alternative funding scenarios to help pay for projects as well. And then in the purple phase on the right is really kind of pulling all that together and developing an actionable plan that you can proceed forward with short, mid, and long-term goals. So next slide, I'll just touch a little bit more detail on that phase one, because this really sets the stage for what we're trying to accomplish. One of the first things we like to do is really gain as much input as we can from all the key constituents. We call it an understanding first or visioning session. We've had really good luck doing this with other counties where you're taking a look at a wide range of topics. It could be issues that are very specific related to staffing concerns or deficiencies of buildings. It could also be, specific things that come into play from municipalities within the county where they might say, we're in need of additional county services in Aurora or Elgin or something like that. So helping to inform what are kind of your guiding principles that you want to put into play when looking at long-range planning. So these are the kind of activities we incorporate in the first session. Every county does it a little bit differently, but I think having a good key group of stakeholders, a wide-ranging group of stakeholders, is very helpful to make sure that we're collecting good information to set the stage for good planning. Next slide. And then there's two other components to this, just in kind of this first phase. First piece being a really good analysis of conditions of some of your existing facilities. I heard discussed earlier today the value of older buildings and facilities that have served you well for a long time. We try to take a look at this with sort of a unbiased eye to say, how viable are some of your existing building assets to meet your long range needs. That can be from a location standpoint. Are the services in the right spot? Is the condition of the building in good shape? What kind of continued investments would you need to make in those buildings to continue to have them as long-term assets? And then other things like, I haven't been to this campus many times. I know over the years, there's been a lot of discussion about just wayfinding and how does it work for folks that are coming here? Do they know where to go? Is it clear? Is it easy, convenient? So we try to, look at all those components when looking at your existing assets to determine how viable they'll be for future. And then next slide is focusing a little bit more on the detail on what I'll call the long-range space planning, staffing needs. Back one, actually. This just is a little snapshot of a couple modeling scenarios. These actually were from Will County, so don't look too closely at the detail of number of judges and that. It was a different county, but this just shows an example of different models we use to kind of look at workload indicators and key drivers of change so that you're having the most accurate prediction you can of what your long-term needs will be. So that's where we'll sit down and typically we'll interview all department heads, elected officials to try to really understand in more detail specific operational concerns, specific deficiencies, so we can weave that into the process. Next slide. So back to the overview, just kind of gives you the idea of what we're looking at. What we found is that every county has a little bit different need. Some counties have really robust inventory of existing buildings. We spend a little bit less time on that. Other counties don't have that, and we need to spend a little bit more time. So what I would recommend is further dialogue to really frame up the specifics of how we can help to move forward on the project. We have a good background understanding, having done a lot of planning work here at Kane County, so that I think is helpful. But ultimately, this is your plan. We're here to just facilitate and bring our expertise to help you formulate a plan that's going to be best for Kane County. And in order to do that, we need to spend a little bit more time with you to understand exactly where you're at, what kind of key things are on your mind, and how to incorporate all the important factors that are important to Kane County. I know you have a new green building program. We want to, things like that are a great example of how to get those kind of functions in, sustainable strategies. We've had a lot of recent experience working on great sustainable projects, even, vast solar projects, net zero energy buildings. So I think, we're happy to bring any expertise we can to the table to help you brainstorm on different strategies and ways to best serve the county. So that gives you kind of an overview. I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
Okay, Mr. Froz, question?
Yep, thanks very much, Jason. 1989, that was 32 years ago, and I think the board members at that time would have probably fully expected this plan to be fully implemented by now. But essentially, we took the last 8 years off as far as capital projects. And I was the one that asked that we start looking at our updating this master plan. And I thank Chairman Caius and Mr. Allen for putting it together so quick. White and Company was our architectural firm for many, many years. And they have a long, long history, as you can see, with developing these plans back in the day. And I was very impressed that over the last several years, even though they weren't our consulting architect, they did attend the admin meetings and stayed on top of King County issues and what this committee was doing. They do have extensive experience with other counties, which really impressed me. They've been through this with other counties, and they also have extensive experience with solar and green building type issues. But it just kind of struck me looking at the original plan, places like the Campana building, the 6th Street School, which doesn't even exist anymore, the Fabian campus, which will soon be empty, and the impact that our new multi-use facility will have on our plan all come into play. So that's why I asked that we start looking at updating this. And I really would like to work the plan, and it's going to be a balance of providing needs for, the administration side, the judicial side, and there's a lot to look at. And I guess my one question is, do we need a formal resolution or motion to start going down this road, or what's the next steps?
You want to do it? I can go next. If
Well,
you want to.
Mr.
I
Fonsack.
think, we discussed this, Chris Allen and myself, about, formulating what would be in a proposal to do the actual planning process. So getting that into a draft for the committee to consider, a little more detail about what the different requirements or statement of work would be. You have the months up there. It looks like 6 to 9 months kind of time frame. So the statement of work, the time of it, and the cost associated with the proposal, and then the committee would consider that and move it forward. I think that was the general outline.
Mr. Martin?
This is more of a comment, I guess, than a question, but one of the things that I like and I've understood about what the process is going to be is that we're going to look at the situation in the kind of the holistic sense of what should we be doing relative to how the world exists now and will exist. I mean, we've had a year now when we found out that we can work remotely. And I don't have science behind me on this, but anecdotally, I don't talk to anybody who works in an office, but there's going to be some kind of a hybrid situation. And what I don't want to do in the sense of planning ahead is planning the building of the 90s and the usage of the 90s. The concept of I mean, I've talked to hundreds of people, 10 people who are they're hiring people and they're living in Pasadena and they're working in Chicago. And it's just as efficient. And I like the idea that thought process is going to be built in here. The Kane County is a little bit unique in the sense that we have our 2 largest population areas at the extreme ends of the county. So we get to put everything in the middle, so it's mutually inconvenient for everybody, except those of us who live in the middle. But we can't have full-fledged facilities all over the place. And with communication as exists and all of the online activity, I'm excited about the process of putting together a plan that will utilize concepts that reflect the reality of what it is today and not what it might have been in the 90s when people were building office buildings. So
I think that's a great point. I mean, I think if there's maybe one silver lining from the pandemic is it has pushed us to think a little bit differently about how we can work and pushed us to, kind of move some of the thinking in a little bit different way. So, that'll definitely be factored into the long range planning, and then in terms of addressing, the Elgin and Aurora, the population centers at the north and south edges of the county, there's a lot of good hybrid models to that where you might be able to have a sort of a small satellite facility for people that still need a little bit of that face-to-face interaction that aren't maybe quite as comfortable with technology, but it doesn't have to be as robust. You could have more of an outpost type facility. So you're bringing services to the constituents where they live. And that's really, dependent upon the specific aspect of what those services are. So, that's the kind of dialogue that we'll get into in the course of the study and one of many options that will be discussed and explored.
Thanks.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Bates?
Ms. Bates. First.
Thank you so much for this great plan and for talking about sustainability and environmental considerations. There is some talk, especially in the environmental committee right now, about a solar field on the property. And so have you been talking to anybody about that yet? And I see there's some nice spaces, especially at the bottom of the picture, that might be considered.
Yeah, we actually had just a very early initial meeting last Friday just to kind of get our thoughts together for this presentation. So I was brought into the loop on some of the discussions about doing a solar field at the probably at the Judicial Center property. I think we started to even have dialogue about, you know, where's the best spot to position that so as not to limit you in terms of other planning at the site. So yeah, I've already started to get a little bit of that detail, and we've done a number of solar projects. Last couple that we've done have been roof-mounted solar with new building projects on some net zero buildings, but similar concepts in play for doing ground-mounted solar as well. So we're starting to get into the loop on that stuff and looking forward to it.
Okay, great, thanks.
Madam Chairman?
There you go. Thank you. I've heard conversation about the Judicial Center and expansion of that, consolidation of that, which is fantastic. We've had preliminary conversation about the Government Center and the need for potentially a new building to service our constituents. This is public service, and we're very customer-based. So customers do come here, they do interface with here, not to the capacity that they did with the Judicial Center, but it is a customer-based operation. The one thing that I've not seen on this master plan, which we know has come to the forefront very much so during this time of pandemic, is our health department. And that is something that we really need to put into this master plan and not forget about them, because that public health and our services of public health, whether it be mental health, vaccinations, just public service to our restaurants, to grocery stores, whoever provides food. That's a critical service that we provide, and they are in, although I've not seen the building yet, I hear it's not to the standards that we hope it would be. And it should be. So that is something that I would like to put very much to the front of this conversation as we do this master plan.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Ford?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to touch on the reason why we need to do this, you know, we always talk about the quality of life. And when we really say that, we're talking about out in the community, but we need to discuss the quality of life for our workers. And that's where things can change with more efficiency building, what makes their work be more efficient. And the safety is becoming a bigger and bigger issue these days. Handicap accessibility. We do what we can in older buildings for handicap accessibility, but we really don't meet the real need for it. I am a big fan of historical buildings. But when we in America talk about historical buildings, they're only a few years old. You go to other countries, friends of mine's, you know, they talk about historical buildings and they're hundreds of years old. So, but the value of buildings change as we change what Martin was talking about. You can outgrow an old building and you can outgrow a new building. So there comes a time when we have a chance to really make a change in where we're at and where we can be at with our facilities. Solar energy, you know, making the green buildings, our IT stuff, where things can be at, where they really need to be at, instead of trying to make things happen. It could be planning it more in the future. Air quality for me is a big thing. The ability to get fresh air units, then using the old systems, planning for space that is needed, storage space, growth space, any other future planning that need to be done. Also, along with Madam Chair is talking about our health department, I put it on all of my board members that visit our health department and see where they're sitting at and how it's orientated. And I believe also the probation officers probably need to be a part of this. And then we need to look at this space here, like we have talked about Faven Parkway, what other usage can it have in the future? There's times when you put things on the tax books and get better use out of it. So this is not just a one look at fee. There are some other numbers that come into play with this that can counteract what we have to do to pay for all this.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Okay, any other discussion from board members or committee members or others on the board? Then
Davis with a comment.
Mr. Davis.
Just quickly, Ed, if you look back at some of these documents that White has done, you'll find that I've been involved in these discussions of master plans since 2004, when I had a bit of a baptism by fire as what to do with the old jail and where to build the new one. So it's exciting to see that we are finally at this point of having serious discussions about it. The folks at White have a tremendous amount of history with us and knowledge of who we are and where we've been. So I look forward to having this discussion continue.
Great. I as well. Any other input?
Mr.
Ms.
Chairman,
Allen?
thank you. Two different directions. As much as I like old buildings, of course, you have to adapt yourself to fit into the old buildings, and we've done that as best as we can. But we have a lot of extraneous buildings around the county, and as facilities management has pointed out over and over again, it would be an awful lot easier to take care of the HVAC and the shoveling of parking lots and so on, if you had one major building than having 20 buildings scattered around the county. And I can certainly appreciate that. I do think, though, that because of the population centers in Elgin and Aurora, it will be reasonable to have a branch court in those places, to have a health department presence in those areas, even if we bring the health department into the government center, which would make sense to do if we're building a new master building. And the other thing that's kind of interesting is when we were making the grassy knoll plans, it was real important to think of trying to bring the circuit clerk into the facility because they had to move paper every day to every courtroom. And what's kind of interesting is that we don't have that problem anymore because practically everything is being done through IT instead. But we have a great big new use of personnel and space to look at body cam footage, which at the time we were talking about the other building, we weren't concerned about at all. So your needs kind of jostle around as you try and perfect your crystal ball into the future. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly, Ms. Allen. I'm going to wrap up the discussion. I think then do we have an action that we're going to be taking that you suggest, Mr. Allen?
Mr. Caius, I'd like to recommend, and we had previous discussions, that we develop an internal team. I'd like to make some recommendations for those team members, as well as do a little bit of recruitment, so that way we can continue the conversation, provide clear guidance for the proposal and what we're seeking further beyond the presentation to White and Company. What I'd like to recommend is myself, Jody, Roger, and other people from those departments. Obviously Jason and White, and if it suits the board, I'd like to recommend that Mr. Caius Mr. Frost continue to work with us, as he's already been part of this, as well as maybe Mavis Bates, if that suits the chairman.
Okay, well, we'll look into that. There's nothing to be decided. I don't think at this meeting, but we'll
For consideration.
consider that, move it around and bring it back to the committee as a formal,
Mhm.
maybe subcommittee or something along those lines. Does that sound right to you, our consultant there?
Yeah, it's very helpful to have I call it like a leadership committee that helps to organize it. So that would be wonderful.
I didn't hear anybody scream no, so sounds like a good idea to me. All right, then we'll move on. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Any new business? Thank God.
Well,
None. Old business.
uh,
Oh, what do you got something? No, you had something in.
Yeah, just some quick updates. I want to let the committee know that on April 7th, Kane County with City of Elgin and Cook County and in support of the Air National Guard opened another vaccination site at the East Side Recreation Center in Elgin, and everything's going very smoothly at this time. I appreciate everybody's help and all the team's effort on that. Did the Third Street Courthouse electrical review, as well as getting ready to send out the RFPs for the new mechanicals and controls contract, as well as the North Road at the Sheriff's Department replacement and design. A lot of going on in the background.
Okay. We covered the
Mis-
JGC.
Mr. Chairman?
Madam Bates.
Bates, I would like to take this opportunity, in case I don't get another opportunity, to thank Madam Chairman and all of the hardworking people who opened up a mass vaccination site in Aurora. Thank you, Madam Chairman, and all the people who worked so hard to make that happen.
It's our job. Thank you.
Well deserved. Commendation. Okay, was there a grant involved in that potential announcement? No, that was not it. Okay. All right, then I will entertain a motion to place the reports on file. Mr. Ford moves.
Martin seconds.
Martin seconds. Roll call, please.
Berman, Davis,
Davis, yes.
Ford, Fries,
Yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Caius.
Caius, yes.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Regrettably, we don't have an executive session today, so we can move right along. Or no,
Davis moves to
unfortunately,
adjourn.
Gums,
Mr.
second.
Davis.
Martin seconds.
Martin second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, everybody.